Parshas Behar, page 80, Eis Gimel. We're going to start from Eis Gimel. Okay, now the Rebbe explained two things. The level of Achaisi, which is the natural instinctive love that a Jew has to Hashem, needs to be awakened. And then he says, Rayasi is the level of Jews giving Hashem sustenance. With Jasik bread sustains the person, so where Jews need to sustain Hashem. So he says, how does bread work? There's four processes in the bread. You plant, and then you harvest, and then you grind, and then you bake. There are four different things. So now the Alter Rebbe is explaining, when you plant a seed, it has to be covered with dirt, and then it has to rot. And even though it has the potential of all the things that come out of the seed, the texture, the color, the taste, and everything, but the seed itself doesn't have it. But you need to cultivate the seed. So down here, the Jew cultivates the seed because he has to question, why does Torah come into Gashmistika things? So the seed needs to be the Gashmistika things to plant it in the ground. Then when you plant do Torah mitzvahs, is planting in the ground, Azerim Bedima, Berina Yikseiru, so then you harvest in the greatest levels of Elokus up there. Okay, so that's, now he says in Gimel, but in order for this to bind itself with the Nefesh Olakis, in a Tefillah Kuriya Nefesh. Tefillah, davening, is called also Nefesh, like it says, Ve'eshbeches Nafshi. I will pour out my soul in prayer to Hashem. Therefore, because until now he was speaking about Torah, is Achaisi. Then he was speaking about Rayasi, is the level of mitzvahs. And now what connects Torah with mitzvahs, that's the level of tefillah. Why? So therefore in tefillah you have to awaken that love. The longing of the soul. Then that's the level of Achaisi. What is the level of Mesiras Nefesh? Now it should be it has to be permeating, it has to become ingrained, established in the person's mind and heart at the time of davening, which is Chochmah. Therefore, the level of tefillah, like we said, is the level of bittul. Because what is davening? Meditating, like it says in Shulchan Aruch, the greatness of Hashem and the lowness of man. So lowness of man and the greatness of Hashem is actually the level of bittul. So tefillah, and that's why you're not allowed to learn before davening. Because in order to learn, that the learning should be done properly, not in a way of ego and all that stuff, it has to be done with the level of tefillah, which is the level of milmata l'mayla, the level of bittul. Then, therefore, then the Torah becomes one with the nefesh olakis. Therefore, the appropriate time to learn Torah is miyad acher tefillah, right after davening, because then you go straight from the level of bittul straight to the level of learning Torah. Therefore, the Gemara says, fortune is the one that comes here simply means to Gan Eden. That the Talmud, his learning, what does it mean biyodei? The Gemara's expression is, fortune is one who comes here to Gan Eden with Talmud biyodei. How does Talmud get into his hand? So the simple meaning is, the Talmud comes into action. Because if the learning doesn't come into action, it's not Torah. Torah is when the learning comes into action. That's the Aveda of planting. Okay. Now the second Aveda in the ground is grinding. Right? Avedas Hatchina ba'Avedas Hashem. What is the concept of grinding? Lev nishba v'nitke. A broken heart. And he said nitke comes from the word dachul b'mducha. Speaks about the man, they ground it in the grinder. So tchina actually means grinding, which is the concept of a broken heart. Meaning, you take the piece of wheat and you grind it up. Like it says, you grind it up very well. The Gemara, when it says we learned, it says Garsinan, the Girsa. So it says that also comes from Rechaim Shogresis. That also comes from the grinding. So he says like this. First you have this whole level of bittul. That's what he explained until now with the planting. Grinding is to leave nishbar v'nitka, a broken heart. Then you have the lisha, the kneading of the dough, mixing the flour and water together. What does kneading do? You take flour, which is separate, you take water, which is two separate entities, and you make it into one. That's the concept of kneading dough. You make two things into one. The same way. The wake and the love to cling to Hashem, be drawn after Hashem like water, that there shouldn't be any pirut chas v'shom. There's no separation between one Jew and the next, or between the Jew and Hashem. So in other words, like this, you have the concept of planting. Then you come to the level of grinding to have a broken heart. Then you come to the lisha, which means, the lisha means you unite different particles together into one. That's the level of Achdus. Achdus Hashem and Achdus B'nai Yisrael. And then you have the level of Afiyah. Ki carbon, mitzakriv, carbon, mincha, mafi, tanur, and sakriv is without the yud. Meaning, nefesh reitzil is guided by Atzmal Hashem. If a nefesh wants to become closer to Hashem, it has to be mafi sanur. What does it mean? In this week's parsha, 10 women will break bread in one oven. In the Teichachav, one of the curses is there will be such poverty, 10 women are going to bake in one bread, bake in one oven. There will be such poverty, such a curse, that the 10 women will have to share one oven. Here the Alter Rebbe is explaining it in a positive way. What is the level of afiyah? That all 10 keiches, the 10 powers of the neshama become the heat, the ava, becomes tanur echad, it becomes all united. All the keiches of the person become one. Pirush, what does it mean? It should become from the level of echad, they all become one. Which is mamalev v'sefer kolam. Therefore, when he realized the realization that the only thing that exists is Hashem, then to slide nafshe, his soul become inflamed. To look into the greatness of Hashem, and the power of the nefesh will be bottled with this strong love. And loving Hashem, the dafke only to cling to Hashem, to quench his thirst to Hashem. And he says that's the level of baking. He says, let's learn this and then we'll explain everything. Fire and water are two opposites. Water binds things together like the malach of kneading something. And eish, you say this. And fire, you take something, you burn it, you separate it into different ashes. Water binds things together, and fire separates things together. Kanei de she'esh, fire mispardim kola, you say that she's, how do you know something has 4 elements? When you burn it, you see all 4 elements distinctive. He says, you say the mayim yetze ba'ashan, you say when it smokes up, then you have, it becomes the afer, the dirt. Kach b'chinas avadis rish be'esh, havchem b'chinas avad sheb'chinas mayim. It's different than the ava of mayim, meaning like this. There's an ava, which is the longing, one level to the next. Then you have, longing comes from distance. Then you have another level of love, which is ava b'tanugim. You're there already, you enjoy it. It's not a longing type of ava, you're there already, you're enjoying it. So he says there's 2 levels of ava. There's ava that comes from the distance, and there's ava and this level of fire, of distance, is a much greater level of ava. As the expression, abstinence makes the heart grow fonder. So the love of distance is stronger than the love of tanugim. That's one of the reasons we're learning Rambam now, Tshuva, the Rambam explains why is about Tshuva greater than the tzaddik, that aspect. So Chassidus explains, because the tzaddik's relationship with Hashem is one of closeness. The tzaddik is not far from Hashem, there has this longing to Hashem. He's there. He's a tzaddik. The Baal Tshuva's love is a love from distance. That's why Baal Tshuva is greater than a tzaddik, because in that respect, in certain respects, because the love is stronger of the distance than it is when you're close up. Yeah. So he says like this. Therefore, to continue in this sustaining Hashem by feeding Hashem kaviyachol, so it has to go through the order of bread. So he discussed the whole order of bread. You have planting, and then you have grinding, and then you have kneading, and then you have baking. And the ultimate goal is to take all 10 powers of the nefesh, that they're all functioning together. One of the mental illnesses of people is that their mind is in one direction and their hearts are in a different direction. You find people that understand something is right, but they don't, the desires are in a different place.
Well, vice versa?
Yeah, well, no. The mind is one place, the heart's in another place. It could be either way.
Something is right, but your mind says it's not.
I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying the mind is in one direction and the heart's in a different direction. And that causes illness, by the way. Mental illness comes because you're not in one place. What happens? All 10 levels become one. That a healthy person's mind and heart are in the same place. Same goal.
That's how we put tefillin.
Tefillin is binding the mind and heart to God. Yeah, along the same concept, yeah. But that's done in action. This we're talking about love and fear and all that stuff. So davening is what connects the physical actions of mitzvahs and the level of Torah. Because tefillah is the bittul that brings Torah into action. Because you can learn Torah about something and not do it. If you learn about why aren't you doing it? Because you don't have bittul, I don't want to. But if you learn this is the right thing to do, then and if you have bittul, then you're going to do it.
Sometimes you really want what you can't.
No, that's a cop-out. Ein lach davar she'ein b'fnei haratzon. There's nothing, the Gemara says, that stands in the way of your will. If you want it and you don't get it, it's because you didn't want it enough. The will is not that strong. You want it, you get it. If you don't want it because you don't get it. I mean, you don't get it because you didn't want it. Something somebody really wants, You get it. Since there's a thesis, the Gemara says sometimes in the Bava Kamas, Bava Metzias, those Gemaras, you believe somebody with a migui. You believe somebody with what he says, because if he'd be a liar, he would be able to say a better lie. It's called a migui. Migui means you believe him with what he says. I mean, there's a lot of conditions on that. But you believe a guy with what he says because he could have said a better lie. So Taisa says, 1 minute, you're dealing about a lot of illiterate people. You're talking about kids. What do you mean they would have thought? And who said they're that smart? Who said they're smart enough to understand that I can say a better lie? The whole premise is if they'd be lying, they say a better lie. Maybe they couldn't come up with a better lie. They're not that smart. So Taisa says, a remarkable concept. He said, something that touches you, everybody's smart. If it really, comes to having to pay money or to do that, those things, then everybody's smart. Because it touches your core. If it touches your core, everybody has a way of getting it. Everybody becomes smart.
But the same token, if you're not going after it, it's not touching your core.
Correct. If you really wanted it, you would get it. That's why the Yiddish expression, kannst du willst du nicht. You could, you just don't want. When the guy asked for help with his horse got stuck in the mud, and the guy said, we can't. So the guy said to him in Russian, you could, you just don't want to. Because if you wanted to, you could. Why is truth painful? The truth is painful, yeah, you're right. Okay. Okay, 3 lines in the end of the first column of 80. The fire from the burning, enthusiasm. It says the contrary to the level of Ava that comes from Mayim, that you're close there already to cling to Hashem. When it's the firm, burning form of love, it separates the koiches, the powers of the soul, therefore, so the ultimate goal is to combine all 10 powers of the soul, that they all want the same thing. 10, and this is the bracha of the curses. Seemingly it's a curse, right? There'll be such poverty, 10 women are going to have to use one oven. But here now the Rebbe is explaining the positive aspect of it. It means that all 10 powers of the soul will become one with the flame of godliness. What does it mean? Another definition of Afiyah, like it says, when the final Yosef was revealing himself to the brothers, so it said that he hurried up because his mercy was opening up. Which is a level of chamimis, of warming up. Pity, when you pity somebody, it's from the warmth of your soul. Where does pity come from? You have a rachmanis on somebody, you're warmed up to the person. He says, Ki cham libei b'kirbei. Okay, so therefore we find by Yosef, Ki nichmu rachmav means his mercy heated up. And he explains, what does that mean? Ki hinei Yisrael nikra Shem Yosef. The Yidden are called Yosef. Why? Ki niksiv noyek atsen Yosef. The Yidden are led like the saint sheep of Yosef. Therefore, what did Yosef do? Who was Yosef's primary Rachmanis an? Was in Binyamin. Right? That's what he cared most about. Binyamin, who is called Ben Aini, the son of my affliction. Rachel called him Ben Aini. Right? The pasuk says in Chumash, when Yosef was born, when Binyamin was born, she called him Ben Aini, and Yaakov called him Binyamin. What does it mean? To be a person of a reckoning, to make a reckoning with your soul, how the soul came all the way down. As far as a person really, when he makes a real reckoning, how low he fell, and to have pity on this and the nitzitz elokis. We learned, if you remember before, that pity awakens love. Yaakov, which redeemed Avraham. Okay? When you have, like we said many times, a lot of the social workers end up marrying their patients, so to speak, because their pity on them awakens the love to the person. So he says, Ben Aini means the son of my affliction. What is the son of my affliction? That you need to awaken Rachmim. That Yosef, Yanichmo Rachmov and Binyamin. Ben Aini means like this. Yosef refers to the Jewish people. Having Rachmanis on the Nefesh, the way it fell down, all the way down, in a way that it becomes affliction. And you have to have Rachmanis on them. And then the pasuk continues. Vayev chachadra vayev shama. He came into the room. What did Yosef do? Simple pasuk. Yosef saw with the Binyamin and he saw that Judah regretted and they all regretted it, right? So awakened Rachman on him and he ran into the room and he cried. Right? Then he came back. So what does it mean? Vayev chachadra. What does it mean in a spiritual sense? He looked into the hidden parts of his nefesh, the golus that it's in. Mistarm tivke nafshi hainu bechadri libay. But he said, v'yisapak, and he said, simu lechem. But he held himself back, he controlled himself, and he said, okay, give bread. This is when he saw Binyamin for the first time. Kitzarach liyashneim, because you need both. Chedva tekiya b'liboy misita the. You need crying on one side and laughing on the other. In the depths of the heart is where he cried. But at the same time, you need to have simcha shel mitzvah. See, a Jew has to, and this is the power of a Jew, by the way, that he can have simultaneously opposite traits. And yeah, that's what the Rabbi says in Tanya. In fact, last night we didn't get up to that part. The Rabbi, in the next few lines, we're going to say what we're learning here. That there's cheder tekiya, the Zohar says, cheder tekiya b'liboy misitra. There's laughing on one side of the heart and there's crying on the other side of the heart. And it's not a stira. Crying is over the lowness that the Nefesh Elokis felt. And the simcha is the level you're able to reach. It's simultaneous.
What does that have to do with the baking of bread?
Because Rachmanis is the fire that awakens this level.
The 4 levels of baking and eating and so on and so forth?
That's the level that awakens this level. Then the Torah, when you have all these things, the learning, the davening, the mitzvahs, all these things together, then the Torah becomes bread. Shenivla beivarim de malka. In other words, in order for bread to sustain a person, you need the 4 stages. You need planting, you need grinding, you need kneading, and you need baking. So then when you have all 4 things spiritually, then you bake bread that sustains, that it becomes absorbed within the person, you digest it, and then it gives you sustenance. Okay? Because that's what happens is when you bake it. Okay. Yeah, there's a breakfast afterwards.